Hello students, I am Gunjan Malik Minocha, Assistant Professor in IHTM, MDU Rohtak. Welcome to EPG Pathshala. We are studying the paper Managing Culture and Diversity, and today we will study the module Human Resource Planning for Managing Diversity. The outcome would be by the end of this module, you will be able to understand the concept and relevance of culture. You will be able to understand the interplay of culture with the society. So let's start with a brief introduction. Most organizations follow planning because they believe that it makes their company plan for the future in order to eliminate the surprises, and it makes them flexible and entrepreneurial. But there are other organizations that resist planning and they feel it bureaucratic, costly and ineffective. So planning for human resource is more important than planning for any other resource, as the demand for the latter depends upon the size and structure of the former. Further, management of human resource hardly begins from human resource planning. In fact, it is the basis for most of the other functions. In simple terms, human resource planning determines the human resources requirement by the organization to achieve its goals. It is the process by which organization ensures that it has the right number and the right kind of people at the right place at the right time, capable of completing the tasks effectively. Objectives of HRP. The first objective of HRP is to recruit and retain the human resources of required quantity and quality. Second objective is to meet the needs of programs of expansion and diversification, if any. Third, to foresee the employee turnover and make the arrangements for minimizing turnover and filling up the consequent vacancies. Fourth, to predict the impact of technology on work, existing employees, and future human resource requirements. Another objective, to improve the standards, the skills, the knowledge, ability and discipline, to assess the surplus or the shortage of human resources and take measures accordingly, to maintain congenial industrial relations by maintaining optimum level and structure of human resources, to minimize the imbalances which may be caused due to unavailability of human resources of right kind, right time, right number and right place, to make best use of human resources, and also to estimate the cost of human resources. Let's have a definition of human resource planning. According to Vidya-mitra, human resource planning is a process by which an organization should move from its current manpower position to its desired manpower position. Though planning, management strives to have the right number, right kind of people at the right place, at the right time, doing the things which result in both the organization and the individual reaching the maximum long-run benefit. One more definition, according to Leon C. Meginon, HRP is an integrated approach to performing the planning aspects of the personal function in order to have a sufficient supply of adequately developed and motivated people to perform the duties in the task required to meet the objectives and satisfy the individual needs and also the goals of organizational members. Human resource planning process to manage the diversity in organization. W.S. Wickstrom in 1971 pointed out the following points, that manpower planning consists of a series of activities like, first, forecasting manpower requirements, either in the terms of mathematical projections or the trends in economic environment and the development in the industry, or it can be either in the terms of judgmental estimates based upon specific future plans of a company, making an inventory at the present manpower resources and assessing the extent to which these resources are optimally employed. Anticipating the manpower problems by projecting present resources into the future and comparing them with the forecast of requirements to determine their adequacy, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Planning other HR functions like sourcing, recruitment, selection, training, development, compensation to ensure that the future manpower requirements are properly met. Steps for effective HRP. First step is environment scanning. Step 2 is forecasting the demand of HR. Step 3 is forecasting the supply of HR. Step 4 is RAG analysis, required, available and gap. Step 5 is plan of action, and step 6 is control and assessment. Human resource planning process in the form of a diagram shows that first we go for environmental scanning, which is internal as well as external. Then we go for RAG analysis, and RAG analysis is done with the help of demand forecast and supply forecast. Then the next step we go for plan of action. Plan of action has been divided into 3 parts: surplus manpower, demand is equal to supply, or shortage of manpower. So there can be 3 situations, so 3 plan of actions. If it is a surplus manpower, we go for VRS, restricted hiring, outplacement or downsizing. If the demand is equal to supply, we need no action. If there is a shortage of manpower, we either need recruitment or we need training. Step 1. Environmental scan. In order to plan for human resource requirements in the future, the first step is environmental scanning. Environmental scanning is a systematic monitoring of the major forces influencing the organization, and these forces are external as well as internal. It includes internal as well as external scanning. Step 1. Environmental scan. In external scan would mean doing a quick scan of the market to keep the larger canvas in mind. This scan would be done using a SWOT analysis. This enables the HR with the information as to what it could leverage to its advantages and where it needs to plug in the gaps. A very important part of this external scanning is that of the employment market and the environment. This can be in the terms of changing employment laws, compensation trend, hiring environment, employment practices, etc. The employment market varies from industry to industry and is often created by the competitors. Then we go for internal scanning. Now, internal scanning would mean collecting and analyzing the information about overall organizational objectives in the terms of sales, markets, growth in the future. This is necessary to make a calculation of the numbers and forecasting the kind of competence required from the people. HR also needs to have accurate information about the level of present manpower, namely the number of people, the type of skills we have, the current capabilities of the organization, the development potential of the untrained employees, the expenses that would be incurred in the development. Step 2 is forecasting the demand of human resource. Demand refers to the quantity and the quality of human resources needed for a particular job at a given point of time and at a particular place. The demand of manpower is based on an interpretation of the organization's business plan. The HRP team must learn how to forecast the demand of labor by studying various established reports specific to the relevant sectors they belong to. HR can do the forecasting of this demand with the help of many tools and methods. These methods can be classified into quantitative and qualitative. The outputs of demand forecast will need to be in the terms of numbers as well as the skills. Now, the next step is forecasting the supply. When we have forecasted the demand, now we need to know what is the supply. Now, manpower supply refers to the quantity and the quality of manpower which is available with the company. It could refer to internal as well as the external supply. It is the process by which the supply of manpower is analyzed and it is integrated into the overall strategy and layout of the organization. Internal supply of labor refers to the employees already occupying positions in the organization. While forecasting supply, it is important to take into account future supply of manpower generated through high potential programs, promotions, transfers, career planning and succession planning too. The step 4 is RAG analysis, required, available or gap. The organization needs to recognize the difference between the current and the desired future states. The difference is known as the gap. This analysis of the gap identifies the potential surplus and the shortage of the employee's competencies and the skills. This process concentrates on the surplus, what the company will do with them in the short and the long term, and search for an evaluate alternative solution. Thus, the gap analysis is the comparison of the company's objectives, strategy, and resources against the opportunities and the threats in its environment to determine the extent of change required in the current strategy. It is the first part of human resource forecast. It is a means of contrasting the current numerical size of the manpower against the size predicted in the business plan. Or we can say the fifth step is plan of action. The plan should put in place the processes and provide technical expertise that ensures that the strategic objectives are fulfilled. The plan is not a standalone entity. It should be an integral part of the overall business plan. The plan should provide a set of specific measurable implementation plans and roadmaps of how the business strategy can be achieved through manpower. This stage helps in laying out the sequence of events that need to be executed to realize the plans. As a result of RAG analysis, organizations may diagnose either a surplus or a shortage of manpower for their future requirements. This step is about planning to manage the outcome of gap analysis. For dealing with shortages, organizations can use innovative sources of manpower or start training the current employees in the short term. In the long term, they could work on becoming a more attractive employer through employer branding, through redesigning the compensation, and many other methods. Many organizations have also tried to manage this situation slightly by lowering the selection criteria or by being more flexible on other employment conditions. The obvious way to deal with surplus manpower is downsizing. However, especially in India, this is looked upon as the last alternative. Alternative ways to handle this could be by restricting hiring, by not filling in the gaps created by resigned employees, and introducing voluntary retirement schemes. Outplacements is also practiced by many companies, wherein the laid-off employees are given some kind of assistance in finding employment elsewhere. In many countries, including India, there are wide variations between the availability of technically trained manpower and the actual demand for such personnel. On the one hand, there may be severe shortage of skilled or the technical manpower. On the other hand, there may be severe surplus of these non-technical professionals. Control and assessment. Now, this stage helps in monitoring the plan over a period of time. Any digression from the plan is identified and necessary actions are taken. Feedback plays an important role in this. A cost-benefit analysis could also be done, and the actual recruitment plans vis-a-vis the projected could be verified once again. Now, there are many factors that account for increased attention to HRP, but the environmental forces like globalization, technology, economic conditions, and even a changing workforce seems to be of great importance. Now, let's discuss importance of HRP in managing diversity. First, reservoir of talent. The organization can have a reservoir of talent at any point of time. People with requisite skills are readily available to carry out the assigned tasks. Second, it prepares human resource for the future. People can be trained, they can be motivated, they can be developed in advance, and this brings in meeting future needs for high quality very easily. Likewise, human resource shortage can also be met comfortably when people quit the organization for various reasons through proper HRP. Expand or contract, one of the very important dimensions. If the organization wants to expand its scale of operations, it can go ahead easily. Advanced planning ensures a continuous supply of people with requisite skills who can handle those challenging jobs. Costs reduction. Planning facilitates the preparation of an appropriate HR budget for each department or division. This in turn helps in controlling the manpower costs by avoiding the shortages or the expenses in manpower supply. The physical facilities such as canteen, quarters, school, medical help, they can also be planned in advance to reduce the cost of recruiting new employees. Succession planning. HRP, as pointed out previously also, prepares people for the future challenges. So the stars can be picked up, they can be kept ready for the future promotions whenever they arise. All multinational companies, for example, have this policy of having a hot list of promising and aids prepared in advance. Effective human resource planning for managing the diversity. Human resource planning specialists have pointed out the fact that most Indian organizations do not have adequate records and information on human resources. Proper retrieval systems are also not in place and they are not available in most cases. The computerized personal information systems, unlike their counterparts in the Western world, they do not play an important role in India. Even the current technologies and the knowledge in respect to human planning is not put into use optimally. Such practices inevitably lead to ineffective HR planning. To compound the problem further, there are unpredictable external influences on the manpower planning, such as changes in the labor market conditions, technology conditions, economic cycles, political changes in such a scenario. So it becomes difficult to forecast the personnel available with an organization at a future date. While vacancies caused by retirements can be predicted accurately, but other factors like resignations, turnovers, deaths, or the competitive attractions, they are difficult to forecast. This problem becomes mainly acute in the respect of important personnel because their replacements cannot be arranged in a shorter span of time. At times, the top management support may not be available to the HR planning efforts. Now, guidelines to avoid the problems. Objectives. The human resource plan must fit in with the overall objectives of the company. Important aspects like people working in the organization, their working conditions, human relationships, they must be kept in mind when we are developing the plan. Top management support. The plan must meet the changing needs of the organization and should enjoy consistent support from the top management of the organization. Employee skills inventory. It is very important. The organization must have an up-to-date employee skills inventory showing the previous jobs they held, tenure on the current job, education and the training qualifications, any specific knowledge or skills, prior work performance, past and current compensation, mobility factors. Markov analysis may be pressed into service while preparing the manpower inventory. Human resource information system, another guideline to avoid such problems. To manage employee skills inventories, organizations should maintain computerized human resource information systems containing data on individual demographics, career progression, appraisals, skills, interest, training, target positions, performance rating, geographic preferences, and promotability ratings. Another important guideline is coordination. A separate HR planning division must be created, especially in the large organizations, to coordinate HR planning exercises at various levels. The various plans for procurement, promotion, and retention of human resources must be integrated properly. The ultimate objective must be to make use of human resources in an optimal manner by filling future vacancies with the right type of people. Effective human resource planning for managing diversity. The dot-com meltdown in the late 90s has taught many bitter lessons to the knowledge-based industries all over the globe. Subsequently, the services and the manufacturing sectors have also taken a big hit. Many Indian companies had to resort to 4 days or 5-day work weeks reduce the excess staff, consider demotions or even terminations in order to strike a proper balance between the demand and supply. Early retirements, they have become the order of the day. Big expansion plans have been put on hold in many cases, and companies had to declare hiring freezes openly. In course, companies like Infosys Technologies, they did not declare and lay off even when the wings were pretty bad, to ward off such serious imbalances in demand and supply. Many Indian companies have invested heavy amounts in computerizing most HR functions. The employee data, banks, and the skill inventories are built to fill the vacant positions in a systematic way. Conclusion. Human resource planning is the process by which an organization ensures that it has the right number, right kind of people, at the right place, at the right time, capable of effectively completing the tasks which will help the organization achieve its goals. Human resource planning translates the organization's objectives and plans it to the number of workers needed to meet those objectives. Include the estimation of how many qualified people are necessary to carry out the activities, how many people are available, and what if anything must be done to ensure that personnel supply equals the personnel demand. When it concerns human resources, there are more specific criticisms. That is, it is over-quantitative and it neglects the qualitative aspects of contribution. The issue has become not how many people should be employed, but ensuring that all the members of the staff are making an effective contribution. And for the future, the questions are, what are the skills that are required? How will they be acquired? There are others, though, that still regard the quantitative planning of resources are important. They do not see its value in trying to predict events, be they wars or takeovers. Rather, they believe that there is a benefit from using planning to challenge assumptions. For some time, moreover, an implicit or explicit wish to get better integration of decision making and resourcing across the whole organization, greater influence by the center over the devolved operating units. Case study. To plan or not to plan, Accurate Remedy Incorporation is a medical transcription firm in India, and its tagline is confidential and accurate transcription that meets your deadlines. It caters to the medical outsourcing requirement of the American medical world. Medical transcription services ought to have 5 distinct values: proposition for their clients, competitive price, fast turnaround time, 100% accuracy, quality output, and security and confidentiality. Until now, Accurate Remedy Incorporation had been a boutique BPO, but with passing time, the sales team in US had been facing a lot of difficulty with selling the Accurate Remedy services at their current price levels. Bigger players had come into the market and they were selling their services at a loss to win the customers, with the hope that customers would become sticky and they would inch their prices up. Nobody knew whether this strategy would work or not. To tide over this crisis, the management team had come to not only one conclusion, that there was no way that the boutique model could sustain and that the strategy needed to be expanded. Accurate Remedy Incorporation's strategy, Shades, the promoter, decided to set in motion his plans to expand from the coming financial years. Based on his strategy T inputs, he was looking at a near-shore acquisition which could help him get an advantage over his other Indian companies. There was no company that he could think of acquiring the moment, but Mr. Gandha, who doubled up as his chief financial officers and the strategic head, had not given up and was having a series of meetings with many in the South India, which seemed to be especially endowed with small transcription shops. Accurate Remedy at the moment has 550 people across 3 locations in India: Mumbai, Hyderabad and Bengaluru. Of these, 500 were part of operations and were involved in transcription, proofreading or supervision. The qualification breakup of the transcriptionists look like undergraduates 20%, graduates 60% and other 20%. The average age of the operations team was 27 years. There was a few retired people from the medical world, of whom most had served as nurses at the local hospitals. To hire or not to hire? Now, in the face of all this, Sampada Kapse, the head of human resources, had a tough job at hand. It was December, the human resource planning process had started and he needed to firm up his numbers. Sheth would be having the first round of discussions with the first draft of the budget next week. Sampada knew that the business slowdown had hit the US markets too. However, the current customers had promised an increase in the business in terms of volume to the tune of 15 to 20%. There was a general reduction in the business, but what the sales team was very upbeat about was the fact that more than willing to outsource the work to good quality players in India. With this background, they had projected a 45% rise in orders. What Sampada feared was, if she hired manpower and orders did not follow the projection, then he would be left with no option but to have people go. So this was not the usual software business where you could utilize your bench in domestic projects. The additional business from current clients was not a worry. The resourcing team got enough lead time to be ready with trained people. The tricky cases are going to be the additions to the client list. New clients invariably wanted a pilot run. Before they gave assured business, it was fair that they tested waters. A pilot team would mean hiring people, not knowing whether they could keep them or not. Same old chicken and the egg story. This would mean accurate remedy had to be people ready. We could probably increase the number of transcribers on the current process and use the supervisory force to double up transcribers till we get the job. Sampada sat and wondered. For the project increase in the revenue, accurate remedy would have to be quickly build a team. They would need transcriptionists, proofreaders, team leaders, shift supervisors, program managers. The ratio of the transcriptionist to the team leader is 12:1 and the ratio of TL to AM is 1:4. Attrition was very high, it was going up to 50%. The previous year when the going was terms good in the business, now with the slowdown, they are expecting that the perennially northbound attrition rate would buckle its trend. As Sampada took her scratch pad out to start making her notes, she wondered, planning on the face of it should be about numbers, but how to go about the whole activity? She tried to scratch her memory and recall every management book that she had read, if an idea could suddenly appear from somewhere. There is nothing which is fixed. We don't know whether we would get the business, if we would need the expertise in. We don't know the rates that we would get in. In all probability, rates would be such that you cannot be sure you would get the best of the guys for the kind of money you could pay. So, we do not know whether there will be an acquisition for sure or not. Every time you ask Sheth, he will have a new list of candidates. Doesn't help our case. Sampada could take it no more. She pushed her chair back and thought she could go and do a little management by walking around. At least I can be sure that there will be people out there. She was tired of racking his grey cells for solutions. So the questions for the case study for the students is, what is Sampada's problem? How do you suggest she plan for her human resource requirement? So do the brainstorming. Thank you.